time for the lunch pail half hour. Woo! Make sure you bring your lunch pail. This is blue collar lunch pail half hour. So what we're talking about today is the price of greatness. Yay! Jesse says yay. Woo woo. All right. So it's the price of greatness. And are you willing to pay the price the greatness costs? Again, this is the lunch pail half hour. We're blue collar. We do the work. We don't complain. And we get dirty. We get dirty doing the work. Woo woo, lunch pail half hour. All right. And so, yeah, we're talking about the price of greatness. And are you willing to pay the price for greatness? Because it's not like a magical, you take a magical pill and you get greatness. To get greatness, you got to really work hard at it. There's a lot of sacrifice. You're training a lot. You're developing your mind. You're going, you're giving everything you got to be great at whatever you're focusing on, whatever your event is, your sport, whatever you want to be great at, and it takes every ounce of energy in order to go for that greatness. And the question is, are you willing to pay the price to be great? Does anybody got any kind of an example of going for greatness, and if they're willing to, and the price they've paid in the past? Yeah, I'll just say, just for me, and I'll say, like, going, like greatness is like going for a really big goal or a dream. That's what you're doing when you're going for greatness. The sky's the limit, and you're just absolutely going for it. And that, just like for me with my training, it's like a huge, it doesn't feel like a sacrifice to me, like going down and jumping in the bay and swimming for 2 to 4 hours in the cold water. And, but it is, that is the cost that I pay to go for, trying to do a big goal of swimming the English Channel, so. Yeah, and I think, and you're also, you're getting out of your normal routine. You're going down there and you're, for me, like, yeah, there's days like I'd like to roll over in bed and just pull the cover up and not go jump in that cold bay. But I do it anyway. Because I got a big goal. And if you're going to go for greatness, you're going to go for big, great goals. You're going to have sacrifices. You're going to have to give up comforts, I try and plan everything around my training, my events. I'm always looking at those. They're like first. They're right there, right at the top. Man, I'm going to get them in somehow, some way. Sometimes there's events or family things that, you put there, you got them up there, but you're squeezing in your training somewheres during the day and going to get it in there, Yeah, and it's the sacrifice you're going to give up to go after this thing, like not sitting on the couch, not watching TV, maybe not even being warm, like when you jump in the bay, it's freaking cold, man. It was 59 degrees the other day, and that's considered kind of warm for the bay, and I was in there like 45 minutes. But you can also like lose, relationships and stuff are going to hurt when you go for greatness. If you can't spend so much time with somebody because you got all this training to do, so that could, if they weren't a very understanding person about you going after your goals. I have a friend of mine who's got, his wife and him have an agreement where it's like you can do whatever you want to do, and the other person can go with them. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, you're doing whatever you want. You're going after your goal or your dream, and then the other person. Well, I guess in this situation it would be a little different if you're doing training. And if that person couldn't keep up with you, or you couldn't keep up with them. But anyway, but it is like there's definitely a lot of sacrifice involved in going for greatness with relationships for sure. You need people who are patient and understanding in your circle. It's to be great. Yeah, the hardest, I think, for going after, yeah, for me, I go after my fears. That's the biggest thing. So when I'm doing things, when I pick events out that I'm going for, they usually scare me on top of everything else. They scare me, man. And I mean, and that is what you need to do to be great in this world. You're going to go out of your comfort zone. Things are going to scare you. So when I first started swimming, I hadn't swum in 8 years, and I didn't learn to swim till I was like 35. I mean, I knew how to swim across the pool like once. And then it was like, so I had but the fear of deep water and cold water and rough water. And swimming in that was like, it was crazy for me to be out there swimming in the bay and especially in the ocean. But so I'm constantly facing my fears, constantly when I keep jumping in that bay. And when I took 8 years off and I started jumping in the bay again, all those fears came back up to the surface. I was like, oh no, they're all back again. But I've been swimming for about a year and a half, and probably about a year of that in the bay. And I noticed that my fears are starting to go down again. I'm getting comfortable in the rough water. I'm getting comfortable in the cold water. I'm back to where I was 8 years ago. It feels like on the comfort area. So, but that is the hardest thing if you're going to go for something great. It's not going to be in your comfort zone. There's no way. Otherwise, everybody'd be great. If it was something easy, it's going to be hard, whatever, your definition of hard is. Yeah, Jesse asked about my fears. Do I have any fears left that I haven't attacked? When they come to the surface, I attack them. I'm going to tell you right now, they're not going to limit my life. They're what you got to go through those fears to be great. I got to attack mine, which are fear. I've had fears of I had fear of heights, which I still have. It's right. I just, like, before I started mountain climbing again, I would go skydive and I would go bungee jump and I would do these things that can put my, facing my fear and put my fears back in check, or in an area that I can handle them and still do the event, that I'm not like just frozen up with fear, so I'm still, being able to function properly like mountain climbing, even though I have fear there, but it's not like this immense fear, like that gripping fear where you think you're gonna die. Anyway, does anybody else want to share any fears or, that they've gone through to try it for going after great goals? You go after great goals, next thing you know, you're doing great things. Yeah, so so I think my biggest thing is with the fears is that, because that is, when I go after an event, it has to scare me, period. And so I go after these events that scare me so much, and then, I don't know, I just keep going after it. I can't even control it. I'm not going to let fear control me at all. Zero, because it controlled me so much when I was younger. I was afraid of so many things. And then, like I said, I went to this Tony Robbins seminar and read his book, and they talked about writing down your fears and attacking those fears, and just what it did for my life after I started doing all that and going, and so, like, for me, yeah, definitely going for greatness in this life is going after great goals, and the great goals are going to have fears attached to them, like a lot of fear for me, and that's like part of living, man. If you want to live a big life, you got to attack those fears. Yeah, So yeah, currently, like I said, I'm just like trying to get back. I just went for my sixth attempt to try to qualify for my sixth attempt to swim the English Channel, and I didn't even I couldn't even get a 6 hour swim in, which is what's mandatory in 60 degrees or less to qualify for the channel. And like I said, it was such a big fear again. All this fear came up when I started swimming again. And I had actually procrastinated. I was swimming in the pool, and then I was going to switch to the bay and the pool, which is my ideal training. And I kept delaying the switching to the pool. I mean, switching to the bay because it scared me so much. But in order to get the English Channel goal, which is a great goal for me, it's, one of the toughest swims in the world, 21 miles from England to France. I definitely had to get back in the bay and face that fear. And now, like I said, I didn't make it, so I re-signed up because that's what we do. I don't quit. I re-signed up, but it's 2 years till I can get back in again. And so, but I'm going like on the positive side, that's a lot of training to get. I'll be back to where I'll be better than I was in the past, and I'll definitely be over those fears by then. So I'm like embracing this delay that I can, really get my brain in order. Just it wasn't enough time. So if you want to go for greatness, you got to get those fears down. That's the biggest thing, man. You got to get the fears down. And then there's tons of work to do. Just like I'll look at this wall behind me, which is brainwashing my brain. I mean, I'm just like, my wall goes all the way down, and I got a rolling chair so I can put it wherever I want on the wall and focus on different goals and affirmations that are on it and pictures of people and, events and things that inspire me. And so that's part of the process to do something great is you gotta put greatness into your brain. You can't, you gotta have greatness in your brain. What was the hardest comfort zone to lose when I was focused on doing something great? So the hardest comfort zone for me was when I wrote down all those fears. I wrote down a whole binder page of fears. And that was when I went to this, like I read his book and I went to his seminar like a long time ago for Tony Robbins. And I went after the easier fears first, which, by the way, every time you knock off a fear and you go after it and you get it under control, that grows your comfort zone. And when your comfort zone starts growing, your confidence grows. And when your confidence grows, your life grows because you start taking on bigger things. You have a much bigger, fuller life, So that's what I try and do is I'm always constantly going after those fears, going after that. So the one that I kept putting off was the fear of heights and the fear of falling. But it just got, I took at that point, I'd taken like 4 attempts to climb Mount Denali in Alaska, the world's coldest mountain, one of the most dangerous mountains and to climb. And I kept, so I would get up there and I'd get on this steep parts of it, of the mountain. And then I would just start gripping and freezing up there in fear. And so I would, and I couldn't, I just couldn't make it to the top, man, because I would get to where it was steep and I'd start gripping. And I go and it would just waste so much energy that I eventually had to, come back down, have the guide tell them that I'm not going to be able to make it, and then, somebody helps take you down, and, but I finally go, man, I got to go after that fear. So I came back and I just made up my mind. And I remember I went and skydived, and that was to me, that was like unbelievable that it was your tandem. It's a tandem. You got a guy you're attached to. And it was just unbelievable, that I was going to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. And it was like, I like telling that story, but I was on a commercial flight right before, like flying from LA up to here or something to the Bay Area. And they said, we're going to have some turbulence. Get your seatbelt on and all this. And we're all locking up, and it's, and you know how it is, just a little rumble, out there. And then here it's like, all right, get out of your seatbelt. They open up the door to the plane, wind's coming in, swooshing around this little plane. And I'm like, okay. And then it's like, okay, start walking towards the door, Bill. And I'm like, wow, this isn't like commercial flying anymore. And then we get to the edge of the door and you got to like shimmy out and jump, It's like it was crazy. And when I jumped down there, I'm like the guy just said you were the most rigid person I've ever, like I was like stiff as a board when I was going down. And he said, I've never felt anybody that stiff ever. And I said, well, that's because I thought I was going to die, man, But I'm going to tell you right now, if you have great goals, you want to be great in something in life, you better write down what fears are in the way of you going after that. And then you go after those fears. You attack those fears because that's the only way you're going to be great, is to attack those fears. And if your thing is, because yeah, and then it's, and doing the work. I mean, the work is like, it's grinding, man. It's just, you got to do the work. And it's smart work. I've worn myself out in the past. I'll just train and go, oh, I have a little more energy. I'll go train some more. And then, you end up getting sick. This just happened to me. I mean, it just happened. I knew what I needed to swim for the channel, right? Like, because I've tried it 5 times in the past. And I knew roughly how many hours a week I was putting in. And I was like, I needed to beef up my training, you know what I mean? When I was doing it, because my attempt was coming up, my qualifying. And when I beefed it up, I got sick. And I got sick for like 5 weeks. I would call it on and off, like just a cold or a bug. But every time I'd go jump in the bay, I would come out and this cold resurfaced and went to my head, went to my chest, and it kept delaying me, because I was overtraining for the fitness I was in. And my buddy made it sound really easy. He says, Bill, it's like you're training too much. Your body's not ready for it, and that's when I knew, like, even if I could make the 6-hour swim, I wasn't going to be anywhere near to being able to swim the 21-mile English Channel, because that's a 12 to 14-hour swim for me. So, so the smart training is like knowing how much you can handle and doing it, So anybody else want to share anything about going for greatness an experience that they've had? Yeah, and so I think it depends what kind of, you're going for, but like I looked at Jordan's stuff and just Kobe Bryant and like, because there's been a lot of stuff on the internet on them and on YouTube, and just the amount of training they put in. And I know when Jordan was at University of God, what school did he go to? North Carolina. The coach came to him and he says, hey, if you want to be great, because he told him he wanted to be great, he says, you got to do this amount of training. And Michael told the coach, he says, hey, I'm doing the same amount as everybody else. He goes, yeah, but you told me you want to be great. You got to do more than everybody else. And so that's part of where Michael's, work ethic came in. And it's interesting because if these people are legitimately great at their sport, they have put a lot of freaking work in, a lot of work, like amazing amounts, and focused. And that's the price of greatness, is that you got to put that work in, or you're not going to get it, you're going to come up short, And so that's what, that's what I look at. So for me, my whole life revolves around my training pretty much. And so, but the thing I have to be careful with is not doing too much, getting sick, getting mentally burned out, because that happens, where you just like, because I trained so much the last time for the English Channel for 8 years. I probably trained for 6 or 7 years, and did 5 attempts. And I got to where after the last attempt, I swam all the way through the winter. I didn't even get an attempt on my last one. I swam all the way through the winter and trained a lot. And I got to where when I looked at the water, it like practically made me sick because I was so burned out on swimming. So I have to be very careful with that too, not burning myself out, man, because yeah, you could want it, you could do a lot more, and then it's a big setback when you can't even look at the water. So, but anyway, so it's a fine line. You got to get the training in to be great. You're going to sacrifice, some stuff off of relationships. You're going to have physical discomfort. I've had a lot of that. But it's mental, man. A lot of that physical discomfort, you can get used to it, So I do, because I'm in the cold, and then I'll get in the hot sauna, and I'll see how long I could last in the hot sauna, because that's another form of discomfort. But you keep discomforting yourself. You get used to being really, really uncomfortable, and I think like getting used to the heat also translate, because it's just another form of being uncomfortable, to getting in the cold in the bay, and so it's like, yeah, you're working everything. You're working the mind, you're working the body, you're, like I said, it's just, and you got to put the time in, and things that you're going to sacrifice stuff. You're definitely going to sacrifice stuff. I mean, like, I don't know, my stuff doesn't feel like a sacrifice, though, because I love the challenge of doing this stuff. I just love it. I like to try to inspire people. I like to go after this stuff that, like, just even to me seems like, it's like, sometimes you start down a path when you're going for a big goal or dream, to do something great. And it almost seems borderline impossible in the beginning. And then you start doing the training and doing the work. And then all of a sudden you start going, wow, I'm getting a lot better. I'm getting better and better and better. And now maybe that's a possibility that I could do that. It's a possibility, And it's just, but that's by just constantly doing that work and getting in there and doing the training. And as you do the training and you face those fears that come along with a lot of the training, you're going to start gaining confidence along the way. You're going to gain confidence, and you're going to start and then you start believing that I can make that goal. You know what I mean? That I can make it, and that it's definitely a possibility that I could make it, and yeah. And a lot of these guys will talk about, I don't know, they train so much that they're like, and have done such great training and practice that they're 100% confident that, they can set world records and different things like that. They really, really 100% believe it. And I don't know if I ever get all the way to that point, because I'm really pushing the envelope on what I can do. And, I get like, okay, I think I could possibly do this, man. I think I can get close. I mean, I try and convince myself that I could do. Jesse asked if I'm afraid of great whites in the English Channel. I used to be like, it's funny she asked that, because I saw Jaws at a very vulnerable age, and the shark. I know Jaws screwed up a lot of people's brains. But the Jaws used to scare the crap out of me. Absolutely scared the crap out of me, man. And here's the thing. So I hate getting this crap scared out of me. So I remember the first ocean swim I did. It was like in Santa Barbara or someplace. It was a triathlon. It was my first ocean swim, like a mile ocean swim. and I heard Jaws music all the way as I was swimming. Dun, 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 dun. And I remember I got out from the swim and I was so exhausted from hearing that Jaws music for my whole swim that by the time I did my other vents, I was like exhausted for them. But you know what I did? I just kept getting in the water. I kept getting in the water. I keep getting in the water. I keep getting in the water. And if, now it's like, and then it goes away. I don't have that fear. Fact is, we swam last time. A great white had jumped up on shore on Alcatraz and grabbed a seal and dragged it back in the water. Or grabbed it really in shallow water, and somebody shot it with a video, and everybody was all freaked out about this. And we went out for a swim the very next day. I'm a member of the South End Club, and we said, we're not afraid of sharks. Sharks are afraid of us because we're South Enders. I was just saying that a little bit in jest, but I tried to believe that. And I got in and we did our swim. And, but it's like, and when I did a triathlon that I made up in Hawaii where I swam from Lanai to Maui, and it was a 10-mile ocean swim. And then I biked like 200 and something miles and then ran like 100 miles. I might have biked 300 miles. But it was right when this is like 9 years ago when there was all these tiger shark attacks out there. It was like every week there was a tiger shark attack, and it was like all over the news. And I was heading over there, and I called my mentor, Bob. He's passed away now, but he still has the record for swimming under the Golden Gate, the fastest swim, But I asked him, and I said, Bob, man, everybody's over here. Nobody's in the water. There's having shark attacks like crazy over here. And I'm supposed to swim 10 miles from Lanai to Maui. And you want me to start at like 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning when it's dark. And everybody's telling me that's when the sharks eat. And he says, Bill, number one, you're not a good enough swimmer to swim in the frickin' when the wind kicks up in the afternoon. So you have to be done by then. And don't listen to them on those sharks. Those sharks will be sleeping when you swim. So I remember I went out there and I got the boat, and I'm going to have a kayaker next to me, or a couple kayakers. And I remember the guy in the boat shouting, hey, where are the kayakers? Where are the kayakers? And the kayakers were still on the boat, and they yelled, we're going to get on when it's day. We're going to get out there when it's daylight. And he says, you guys get in there. And I remember I started swimming, and somebody had told me, like, just think there's something better to eat than me out here, So I just kept thinking there's something better to eat than me out here, like this kayak. Just kidding. But yeah, I swam 6 hours, but I was able to stay calm and not think about the sharks or the tiger sharks. And I love the challenge of that. They talk about the Farallones out there. That's a great white breeding ground. And that's like really crazy to swim out there. And you know what? I'd love to swim out there sometime, man. That'll scare the crap out of me, but it'll make me stronger. And it's just another fear. Like somebody was telling me there's some shark out there that's the size of a bus, a great white. He's got some name. And I'm going like, oh yeah, I need to swim around by that shark, the bus shark. Anyway, though, yeah, so if you want to be great, have great goals, you go after them, you don't care what other people say. You're trying not to share them too much with people. If your confidence is fragile, if you got fragile confidence, don't share it till you build that confidence up, because there's a tendency where people will try, I hate it, but it's true that people will try to bring you down. If they don't feel good about their life, they will try and bring you down, and they're not going to want you to make some big old goal and do stuff. So sometimes in the beginning, best to keep it to yourself, till you start building that confidence that you can go after that goal or dream. Then you put your head down. You work hard at that goal. You never quit. No matter how many times you get knocked on your ass, you never quit. and you keep going after it, and you write out those fears that could be that could be there that are going to stop you, and you make it your priority that you're going after that goal. It's your priority. I mean, it just is. If you want to be great, it's got to be a priority, and you got to fit everything else in around that goal and that training, and when you're doing those events, and you have to make it all work around that. But pretty much to be really, really great in this world, that's got to be your number one priority, because to be really, really great is freaking hard. It's hard work, everything's hard about it. So anyway, all right. So I think we're signing up for the lunch pail half hour this today. Blue collar, we go after our goals and dreams. We never quit. Woo woo! Lunch pail half hour. Woo woo! We're doing it again on Thursday, 3:30 again. Woo woo! Signing off.